Where'd you sit down? Hey, Invested family. Sorry we're a few minutes late for getting started today. Had some technical difficulties, but we are here now. For those of you who don't know, it is Financial Literacy Month, so we'll be releasing some content, later this month and next week as well, just to talk about some of our description of financial literacy. But today we want to just kind of talk about our own personal financial journeys and maybe how we got here, whether it's with Invested or just in general with things we've accomplished recently. So anyone want to start off? Andrew, you want to start us off, man? Talk about your journey?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I'm going to talk about the journey with Invested, plus my journey of financial literacy here in U.S. Actually, I come from another country. However, I've been here 6 years now. I feel way more American than anything else. But there is no such thing as having access to investments and to such free education as here in U.S. and especially with Invested. So I learned how it is possible to retire and to have a very nice retirement. It is possible to save and to reach different goals. Either there might be like short-term or long-term. And also with Invested, I learned how to do that properly and way faster than what I was thinking. So yeah, this is my journey so far, and then I'm gonna leave it to you guys. You can go ahead.
I guess I'll go. So, Andrew brought up, maybe by accident, but brought up the fact that he learned that you can retire. And I think that's been something, at least in our culture now, that seems like a far off thing. So we get in bad spending habits. So I think that's important to note. It's like, not just that you can have like this luxurious retirement, which might seem like a pipe dream, but that, yeah, you can retire just by doing simple things. It's not rocket science. No offense to rocket scientists out there. But it's something that you can do step by step and get there. And, Andrew's been here for 6 years and already accomplished so much in his financial journey. And
yeah, congrats on that house.
Yeah, congrats. You left that one out, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and Andrew has also purchased a house recently, which is huge. And a lot of people, that have families, that's a big focal point for them. So I guess my financial journey was probably a rocky start, which some people are shocked because I do this as a job now. But I wasn't, when I was in college, I never said, yeah, I want to be an advisor. I want to do this when I graduate. So I was a communications major, and I wasn't, raised, in like a financially literate house. I didn't know about these types of things and the importance of not just saving. I mean, I think that's kind of hopefully instilled in a lot of families, but why you're saving. For me and my brother, I think the first recollection I have of actually saving something was we pooled our money to buy a Nintendo 64. And this was like 2 or 3 years after everyone already had their N64s and had already moved on to like PlayStation 2. But that was a big deal for us. So I look at things like that as, for me, like that was a simplistic thing, but I look back now and I try to use the same value systems. Like I wanted to achieve something, and for us at that point it was a video game system, but using that same type of thought process to do it. And, so I guess my financial journey, realistically did start after college. So right now at Invested, we always say, start early. And that's not just monetarily, it's not just saying start early, by depositing money, but also learning, learn these types of things, teach these types of things to your kids. So for myself, when I graduated, I had no idea what a 401k was. I thought it was just like a funny thing that they said in movies that had adults. Like, my 401k is going down. Like, I didn't know what that actually meant. So,
I still don't quite know what it means.
So when I graduated, started T. Rowe Price just kind of as a customer service role. But in order to do that successfully, we also had to know a lot of the basic financial terms. So 8 years later, here I am doing this, and I've always taken the opportunity to learn more, and I've made a career out of it. So for those that don't want to do it as a career, then look at it as know enough information to be dangerous. And I know I say that all the time, but know enough to understand who you should be working with, what they're doing for you, how they're paid, things along those lines, so that you protect yourself. And I think that's really what I've learned from my financial journey. Is it's not, it goes back to the old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And especially in finance, you want to make sure that you have good people that you're surrounding yourself with. So mine's been a a long journey, I guess, at this point, but a fun one. And I've ended up here, so I couldn't be happier. Sorry, I took up a lot of time. Does anyone else want to jump in here?
Hey everyone, it's Joy here. You probably see me in the previous video we did for Facebook, marketing coordinator. I guess I'll just start with kind of how finances and education has been threaded through my life. I think the earliest memory I have of like finances was my late grandmother. She probably purchased, or either it was my mom. She gave us like those savings accounts, those Building Bears things.
Okay, yeah.
Or you could just kind of get your kids started with a bank account and it'll grow. And I think that was my first introduction to the concept of saving and having something that's building, and you can see the end product of it at some point. Of course, as a little kid, you're not withdrawing money from a bank account, but you at least kind of get the, I think they gave you these little like fake checkbooks that you could kind of like, get the sense of, oh, this is what adults do. They manage a checkbook, they deposit things into their bank account, and then they also withdraw things. And I think just from having those kind of activities in my household, it got me used to the idea of saving. And I will say, growing up, I was a pretty prudent saver, just kind of naturally. Like, my mom would always joke that when she would give me money to go out with friends, that I'd always end up coming back with money just because, like, the other parents would end up purchasing our meal. No, not cheap. That's just how it ended up.
She'd come back with even more money.
Just saving. Like, that was just kind of like what I was kind of, been known for, just saving. And even now, like I'd say that I've accumulated a lot in my savings, just watching my expenses, not overdoing it. I didn't have any credit cards when I was in college or anything. I don't know if that's just things that my mom told me as I was growing up, like don't apply for credit cards if you can't pay for the balance when it's due. So I've just always kind of stayed away from credit cards, even though some credit cards are good, and that could be a later date when we talk about that. But I would say that I never thought that I'd end up in an industry such as this. I went to school to pursue a career in marketing, and luckily through some my job journey, I ended up in Invested, and I did have a 401k at previous employers, but having now joined the Invested team, I've been able to kind of take it to the next level and really get a greater sense of what my money can be doing for me, aside from just being in a savings account and having tons of cash. And I really appreciate the conversation that I've had with Jordan and Indrid in regards to things like that. And all I can say is just been working at Invested. I've enjoyed, learning tons of information about investing, thinking about budgeting in a different way. I know that for me, I know I eat out a lot, and I probably could say, well, I treat myself. I don't spend my money on a lot of other things, so I can kind of justify it. But, sitting in on our seminars like Budgeting Basics, there's really more ways that I could be trimming down what I'm spending. And so I appreciate that kind of content, those kind of conversations, being in the environment and Invested, that I'm actually going to be able to one day, hopefully be in a position like Indrid and purchase a house, be able to contribute more to my 401k, my IRA that I have with Invested, and be able to support some other life changes that are down the pipeline. So I'll leave it at that.
Cool.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Bridget. I'm an intern here at Invested. And I guess I'm in a much different financial situation than these other individuals. They're a little bit more experienced than I am. They've been through what I'm going through at the moment. So I'm a college kid at the moment. So I'm kind of just like trying to scrape by and get through school. But as a junior in college, it's like around the time where I'm supposed to be thinking about how I'm going to be thrown out in the real world and be able to live on my own. So basically, when I was growing up, my financial journey was kind of watching my grandfather manage his finances. My grandfather was very smart with his money. And it all started out, I can remember we had like a coin jar. And so whenever you came home with change, you threw those coins in the jar. And I always thought to myself as a kid, like, how much money really is that? Like, is it, like, it's not really going to do anything. And so every time the jar was full, my grandfather would take all the coins, lay them out on the table, roll them up, and take them to the bank and put them in a savings account. Well, once I graduated from high school and it was time for me to go to college, we had talked about what kind of money my grandfather had put aside for me, which I'm very grateful. I was very fortunate as a kid. I had, like, my grandfather, I was his only granddaughter, so he really worked hard on saving up money for me so that I wouldn't have student debt as a college student. And so that saving all those years really meant a lot at the end when it came time for that money to actually matter and go towards something. So ever since then, basically I have realized the importance of saving and putting aside money. So around the time in high school when I had realized this, I had come up with my own savings account and my own checking account. I got my first debit card. And so every time I worked, I would get a paycheck, and the paycheck, I didn't really have to pay for much in high school. So the paycheck would kind of get split in half. And I started this at the age of I started working when I was 16, I believe. And so every paycheck I would get, that money would go to the side. And I still do that in college. Like if I, have a little bit of money, if there's some extra that I know that I may not need for anything, I'll put it aside. So basically that's just how I figured out the importance of savings. And in college, I have a lot of friends who are younger and they do waste their money a little bit. So I watch them do that. And I'm very grateful to not have loans or anything like that. Like my friends, but I do see my friends with loans and student debt, and they're going out to eat more than I am. So I realize how, in those moments, I realize how much more I learn from my peers and learn that, even looking at other people's financial situations, I always think to myself, wow, I hope that they're saving that money to pay off their loans in the end. So I guess for me, a personal goal that I'd like to pursue after college is I'd like to move out to California. I have my really good friend from high school lives there, and her dad just passed away a year ago. And so I'd like to go out there and be reunited with her. But of course, this comes with a cost. I wouldn't be moving for about a year or two once I can get on my feet. But it is definitely important to start looking ahead of time to realize how much money you need to save up before you actually make that move. So for me, I've set a goal for myself for when I graduate. I'm going to have a certain amount of money saved up for an emergency fund because LA is extremely expensive, and I'm very fortunate to have money left for me from my grandfather. But my parents have cracked the whip kind of thing where once I graduate, the money stops. So basically my financial journey is not going to end anytime soon. I'm still trying to get things figured out, and I'm very grateful to be at Invested, especially as my very first internship, because coming in here, I had no idea about finances at all. Even the thought of finances just scared me. I was in my first finance class this semester, and I'm like, wow, this stuff is a lot of numbers. But when it comes down to it, it's really actually easy to understand and teach yourself as long as you put in the work and put in the time. And these are important things to know. Learning from all the individuals at Invested, I have money just sitting around in my savings, and it could be growing to be even more for when I have kids, because right now I haven't even thought of that, but it is a thought that you need to think about way ahead of time, because when the time comes, you need to be prepared for those life changes. So I'm definitely learning a lot here at Invested, and these people at Invested teach me a lot. Joy, George, and Endrit, and Allison. I keep saying these people, but I think that working at Invested as my first internship is the most, I'm very grateful. It's the most, I think, I'm trying to think of a really good word for it.
Fun?
Definitely fun, definitely fun. I would say like most beneficial. Like I'm very grateful that this is where I started out at because I learned marketing and videography at school and things like that. But when I come in here, I'm learning those skills from Joy and Allison, but I'm also learning from George and Endrit how to manage my finances, which is something that I think is really important for everyone to learn, no matter how old they are. So
you got a young perspective.
An old perspective.
Nice.
So kind of I want to add this, like if you'd have asked me before, like years ago, what financial literacy means, I would assume that a guy or a girl that knows a lot about numbers and things like that. But actually, it's not different, but this is way easier than that. Is being able to do smart decisions when it comes to think ahead about retirement again and investing. So believing in smart money and smart investments. Which mean money should work for you, right?
Yeah.
An investment, if the money is not working for you, is not fully considered an investment. Like other people would think that they would put money and effort and consider that an investment. So basically, if you put effort, that is considered your work. So just knowing the difference, just knowing how to do better, basically. And going back to Bridget's point, like some people might struggle with payments of I don't know loans and debt and things like that. Just by knowing a little bit better, and nothing wrong with that, but just by knowing, by following certain steps, you can get out of that sooner. So that's part of financial literacy also. So yeah, I changed my perspective when it comes to that, and now thank of Invested team, I know way more, and we're ready to share that with you, of course.
Yeah. So you've just seen, 4 individuals at varying degrees of their own financial journeys, and I think that's important. It's not necessarily how old you are in your financial journey. You can get started earlier. You can get started later. No one's telling you how you need to write that story, but know where it's at, know where it starts, and know what you want to write it about and where you want to go with it. So I think it's been great to have a lot of different perspectives here, and even though we all might be close in age, like we all have different varying degrees of where we're at and what we're trying to accomplish. So as Financial Literacy Month continues, we want to invite you guys to keep following our content here. Costs nothing to come in to meet with us. So regardless of where you're at in your journey, we're happy to help out with your financial picture and what you're looking to do goal-wise. So feel free to follow us, comment on things if you want to see other content here, and we look forward to seeing you the rest of the month.
Oh, and a plug, we are running a promotion this month that we're offering free seminars to any business, school, organization. We have a link. You can nominate a business, organization, or school for a free seminar on a range of financial topics. So we'll be doing that all April. You can tag them in a comment if that's easier, and then we'll follow up with you with to get some additional information. But just want to let you guys know that's another resource that we have going on this month. So.
Awesome.
Cool stuff.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy financial
Friday.
literacy
Yeah.
month.
yeah.
Thank you for following us.
Be safe.